Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Sahil Bansal and I have studied law across different institutions and different jurisdictions. And in my studying of the law, I've realized that more deeply one engages with the law, less daunting it starts to feel. What initially appears very gargantuan, complex, or intimidating, it becomes clearer once we understand the language, the context, and why does a provision or a legislation actually exist. In the Indian context, I feel the Code of Civil Procedure in particular is a subject that many students and even some young professionals find overwhelming. Not because it's inherently difficult, but because it is perceived to be something mechanical, abstract, or something filled with very unfamiliar terminology, which puts many people off. So these sessions are my attempt to whatever extent I can to change this perception. Here we will study the Code of Civil Procedure slowly and steadily with a lot of clarity and context, because the point is to make it feel less abstract and more connected to you and to the larger framework of the law that is geared towards meting out justice to the society. So the focus will be on understanding what the provisions are actually saying, how the language of the code operates, and how different parts of CPC connect with each other in order to bring together a whole that serves the justice in civil courts. So once this terminology becomes clearer to you, the law, you will realize, starts to feel much more approachable. So I am creating these videos or sessions, as you may call it, because I have a really interest in teaching, and having engaged with the law over all these last few years, I have started to really fall in love with it, and I want to put that love out for others also to discover. So why not begin with one of the most unloved subjects, as I've heard around me, CPC. So whether you are a law student or a judicial aspirant or even a young professional, my hope is that these sessions will help you think more clearly about CPC. And before we move ahead, I also want to put out the pedagogical approach that I'll be taking. We'll be relying heavily on the text of the legislation itself. So I would suggest that you always keep the Bare Act handy whenever you are attending the sessions or watching the videos, because we'll keep going back to the actual language of the text, because the point is to read it together and to make it feel less unfamiliar and more familiar. It'll return the love. Once you approach it, it'll start feeling much more approachable and friendlier. And I feel, in my experience, the daunting task at the very start is to open a clean Bare Act. It's the hardest thing to do because you open it and it feels absolutely alien to you. But once you start engaging with it, you mark it, you read it, you make your notes on it, it starts to feel your own and starts to return the love. So the more it starts to feel your own, it'll be easier for you to, just use it in, be it in an academic setting or in an evaluative setting or even in a courtroom, in an exam room or in a classroom. That is why it's important that we keep going back to the original text instead of merely making reference to a particular provision in the code and moving ahead with this discussion. We will keep opening the Bare Act again and again, so with time you engage with it and you make it your own. Let me show you mine, how colorful it is. This is all, and I've started feeling much confident opening it, because I know I've already opened it, I've already been with it for so long that now I don't feel scared of it. That's why I'll be heavily relying on the text of the legislation itself. And the idea is for us to read the text together and understand it line by line. We'll be doing threadbare analysis of all the important parts of CPC, and even the parts that we're not going to spend a lot of time on. I will not leave you in a lurch to chart the uncharted waters on your own. We will always go through the section once at least, and for the sections where we feel they are important to your practice, to your understanding of the CPC, we'll be spending ample amount of time in making you understand that. And alongside the provisions, we will also be relying on the case laws, because a big part of the reason that it feels so abstract to you is because a lot of people approach the legislation only without understanding how things are operating. So you'll see a provision, you will read the provision and move on. But the point is to understand how the provision is actually helping the society, actually helping the legal structure, and that could be understood better with what else than real world examples. And what are case laws? They're real world examples. And apart from that, a provision may appear to be very brief and straightforward in its wording, but its scope, limitations, and nuances, they emerge through these judgments that the courts have put in their judicial prudence, and they have evolved the jurisprudence around it. A lot of the times you'll find a provision and you will find an angle to it which is now the established law, but that angle has been developed through a case law. So you'll not be able to gather that with mere reading of the provision. That's why it's always important to keep yourself grounded with judgments. And it will also help you, ingrain it in your mind when we're reading a provision and then we engage with it so deeply through a judgment or a case law or multiple case laws and judgments that you will never forget it. So by engaging with the statutory text and the judicial reasoning surrounding it, the aim is to develop a deeper and more sustained understanding of the civil procedure while we are having the discussions, so that you don't have to separately earmark a time to go and memorize your code. That will defeat the whole purpose of these sessions, because these sessions are supposed to be slow, steady, and for you to sit with the law, to let it wash over you, so that while you are discussing them, they get imprinted in your mind, and you don't have to sit separately or think that, oh, I have to do CPC now. You don't. You just have to sit through these sessions and you have to engage with it while we are engaging with it together. So you're not left in loneliness to deal with a gargantuan task once again. And by the end of it, you'll realize that what was once so big or cut out or dry, it's not really that. It's just a friendly law couched in a little unfamiliar terms. And once those terms become familiar, you start to realize it's as juicy, some people call it. It's as juicy and as interesting as the Constitution itself. Because what is it? We're going to realize it's nothing but a manifestation of the constitutional principles. Constitution is all about serving the justice, and we need a procedure to serve the justice. But more on that once we start discussing it in detail. So in the next video or the next session, class, whatever you would like to call it, we'll begin with a detailed engagement of the code, and we'll see how it has only been couched in terms that make it look a little less appealing, but it's actually a very simple law and a very helpful one at that. So see you in the next session.